Activate your mind until you're taken to another place. I'm listening to my intuition. Religious systems make prisons wide, distorting your vision. Satan wreaking havoc is tragic. They call it superstition. Dogmatic schisms are written by the son of perdition. Hidden esoterics, seeking truth after knowledge. If the truth wasn't hidden, then everyone would find it. Kundalini rising, the masses hypnotized. It's the seventh ray of light, ignite the third eye brightly shining. Shamanistic perceptions and teaching lessons. I'm returning to the earth like one returns to the essence. Etheric ancestral spirits that are guiding my progression. Benevolent entities get peace, bestowing blessings. I'm a tele-evangelist, but television can't handle this. Try to walk in integrity when a lot of preachers are scandalous. I'm a living epistle, a walking ark of the covenant. Heed the words of the prophets, never put your trust in the government. I'm in tune with the spirit, revealing the prophecies. And my lyrics, you will hear it, don't fear it, the mysteries you can find.
The gods, do they exist? What are they? We're going to take a detour from our usual knowledge of self videos to go into the knowledge of the imagination of the world. What are the gods? If you consider yourself to be a self, an individual self, if you believe your individual self exists, then gods must exist. But what are they? When we think of gods, we refer back to all the spiritual teachings from many nations and many cultures of ancient time who speak of gods in these anthropomorphic and mystical ways. But as evolution has taken place and we have gotten into this 21st century, we have gotten away from this understanding. And we have gotten into a more scientific understanding. And since we were brought up in this age of scientific understanding, being the children of science, we have become orphans of wisdom. We believe we are smarter today than the ancients were. So let's try to understand what they meant by gods. Because today in science says if you cannot measure it or you cannot prove what these energies or beings are and come from, then they don't exist. And they are right from a scientific view. That's why the scientific view is limited and should not be the last word on anything. See, the scientific mind and the scientific view, they only deal horizontally, only on the surface, what they can see, touch, smell, hear, and taste. And since these things that they can see, touch, smell, hear, and taste constantly change, science will constantly change. So we are going to deal vertically because most spiritual people and those who deal with deeper teachings deal vertically, with depth, in heights, not so much horizontally on the surface of things. And this is a scientific view, but not the modern scientific view, which only deals on the surface, what you can prove, what you can measure, right? And so the scientific mind believes this universe is like a machine run by mechanical laws. But this is not what the ancients understood when they were writing these spiritual books and speaking of gods as anthropomorphic. So what are gods? Let's get into it. To understand what's going to be presented today, you need to understand one certain principle. This universal principle is as above, so below. and you will see what I mean. For instance, have you ever seen Russian dolls, where you take one doll, open it, and it's another doll, the exact same replica but of a smaller size. You open that one, and it's another exact same replica but a smaller size, and so on and so forth. This is a limited example of the principle as above, so below. What is small is also what is great. And so, with this principle, this will unlock the key to understanding the gods, right? So, when one has the knowledge of self, the knowing of what you are or what you are not, which reveals what you are, you understand that intelligence pervades the entire scope of what we call the universe. Intelligence is in everything. It's behind every action, every movement. And we have examples of this intelligence, even in our experience of this life. For example, instincts, right? The instinct of like certain wildebeest that can walk in or stand up in 5 minutes, walk in 30 minutes, run faster than a hyena in a day. This sect of wildebeest come with a certain intelligence to do this. It's nothing acquired. It's not an acquired intelligence. It's an innate intelligence that already comes in this form, fresh out of the womb. And we label all these are just instincts, as if we know what instincts are, but we do not know what instincts are. We just put a label on it and assume we know, right? So what about like schools of fish? How it appears that each individual fish has their own mind, but there's no leader in this school, but they're moving in harmony. So there must be a greater mind controlling, as it were, this school of fish to move certain directions. Or flocks of birds, we see the same. Or how a turtle can go to the sand, a sea turtle, and lay her eggs in the sand. And once these turtles hatch, they sprint to the sea. Why do they sprint to the sea? Because there's praise of birds coming to feast on them. And so right out the egg, they sprint to the sea. Who told them that there was prey above that's trying to eat them? Why do they sprint? It's an innate intelligence that's not acquired. So when you understand that this universal intelligence, or this one intelligence that works behind everything, moves everything, even us, our intelligence is an expression of the universe through our body-mind organism. And this universal intelligence expresses itself in different ways according to the complexity of the organism. And so we see that even minerals have a certain intelligence, but not as complex as plants. Plants have a certain intelligence, but not as complex as animals. And animals have a certain intelligence, but not as complex as humans. And so does intelligence stop with humans? So we see this intelligence pervades all, and depending on the form, it expresses itself in different ways. And so not only intelligence pervades the universe, but life also pervades the whole entire universe. There's nothing dead in the universe. Our minds label things alive and dead to operate within our language to communicate. But really, nothing is dead. What we call dead is something that doesn't move like we move. We consider that dead. But we'll see cells. Scientists look at cells and see they have an intelligence and a life of their own. Even the single cell, and smaller than the cell is the protein, which has a life of its own. Particles smaller than that have lives of their own. It's all alive, all intelligent. And so we see life and intelligence pervades this physical plane. And this is the horizontal plane that we're talking about, right? Science can prove this. But we're dealing with the gods today. And so we have to go as above, so below, and use this principle. And so dealing with strictly the physical plane, we can see that our bodies are made up of cells, right? And it appears to the scientific mind that it's all mechanical. But we understand cells to be beings of their own, right? They have a mind of their own, but they operate according to the laws and mind of our body. So, and not only are the cells, for instance, we would be a god to the cell, but we are a cell to the earth, and the earth is a cell in the universe. And that universe is a cell within whatever is beyond that, right? This is an as above, so below principle. Even look at you, the individual, right? You are an individual with a mind of your own and the operation of your own. But then that individual, when it has a family, is one amongst a family who in that family have a mind of their own. The whole family, and has a way of its own. And with that one family would be considered a cell within the community, which the community has a mind and a movement of its own. And that community is a cell within the state, which has the same mind and way of its own. And that state is a cell within a country. And these countries are a cell within the earth. And the earth is a cell within the universe, and so on and so forth. So we see the same principle, as above, so below. And these states are like entities, right? I mean, look at corporations. We would say, well, we name certain corporations entities that take on a mind and a life of their own, but they're made up of individual beings and parts. Capitalism, which has a mind of its own. I remember like 6, 7, 8 years ago, I used to study capitalism deeply. Capitalism is an entity of its own that has took on a mind of its own, that no one man is in control of, but all are under the sway of it. And it has grown so big that nobody can control it. They're just all working within it. So, and we call these entities, right? So understand this moving forward. Because this is not only on the physical plane, what we can see with our eyes and hear with our ears, but it's also on the subtle planes, the same understanding. On subtler dimensions, there are beings, and they are intelligent. All religions have spoken of them. In the Judaic tradition, they were called elohim. In the Christian tradition, they are called angels, and demons. In the Hindu tradition, they're called devas. In the Egyptian tradition, they were called neteru. In the Greek tradition, they're called gods or daemons. These are non-physical beings, like we understand physical to be. And in these traditions, they are spoke of anthropomorphically. And these beings are intelligent, but just not like human intelligent. Just as animals do not have intelligence like a plant or a human. These beings, which are the gods, which are nothing but cosmic laws, right? Which we understand in the when we have a scientific mind, we understand cosmic laws to be mechanical. Just as the working of your body is mechanical. You get a cut, your cut starts to heal. We think that's just mechanical. But there are beings healing the cut. Beings healing the cut. But we tend to think it's just a way of life. It's a mechanism. But the ancients didn't understand, because they understood all things to be intelligent, intelligence pervading the whole of the universe. The ancients understood these laws are not just mechanical things, but they are enacted by beings. And again, we have examples of this on the physical plane. Like I said, when you get a cut, right? There are beings working to heal this cut. But not only that, before bacteria was discovered, when meat was left out, it would decompose, it would rot, right? And people thought this was a mechanical thing. You leave meat out, it begins to decay. This was just a mechanical law. Or even like when the Black Plague was going around, they thought like bad air was causing this illness. Something inorganic was causing this illness. But we know certain beings get in you to cause you to be ill. Viruses, bacteria, right? And just like the rotting of the meat, illnesses, they all follow a certain pattern, a certain law. So this law of food rotting, right? It is predictable. You lay meat out and it rots within a certain amount of time, depending on the food. But this law of rotting food is actually, that appears mechanical, is actually mediated by entities, intelligent beings that follow certain predictable laws. Just as the cosmic laws are predictable and they are mediated by entities. Even humans, we are intelligent too. Even humans are predictable when faced with certain things. I mean, look at everybody wearing a mask around you. Predictable. You put something in front of them and they act a certain way. The same with laws, the same with the rotting food, but all is mediated by entities. This is what the ancients understood the gods to be, higher beings, which we call cosmic laws in this time, but higher intelligences that are not on the physical plane of existence. Yet, just as the entities of the rotten food could be used by certain rituals, which would be putting out the meat, back in the day, the Greeks, the Egyptians, and many cultures around the earth used certain rituals to call these beings, these higher beings, down or out. In the same way, when you understand the law, you understand the ritual which can manifest these certain entities. And within these quote unquote gods dwell many beings, just like within your own body exist many beings, cells, atoms, so on, so forth. And each cell has a mind and memory and habits of their own. They respond to the general law of our body, as I said before, and of our mind, but they also have their own independent ones. And it's the same with the gods, the greater beings. This is how the ancients understood them. Within the field of these gods being, there are other even celestial beings within them, which fulfill certain functions. And in certain traditions and schools of thought around the world, they'll talk about things like nature spirits or elementals. These are what you call gnomes or fairies or odines. And you see these on your television screen. If you grew up watching cartoons or you have children that watch cartoons, you'll see shows like Tinkerbell or Peter Pan, which have these nature spirits, which help the working of nature. They help grow the trees, grow the flowers, grow the gardens. That's why you'll see, if you ever walk in a garden, you'll see a statue of a gnome in somebody's garden. People think these are just come out of nowhere. Somebody thought of this idea. But actually people who see beyond the physical senses actually see these beings, not with the physical eyes, though. And these are the lowest realm of gods, which are your nature spirits, gnomes, fairies. They exist in the etheric plane. These are etheric entities, which, when I say etheric, I know most people won't understand, but understand that you have the physical world, right? You see things, you see colors, shapes, you hear things. The etheric realm is like if you touch something, you have hardness, right? Soft or hard. This is not in the physical plane. This is in the etheric sense, soft and hard. You can't point to something and point out or hear something hard or soft because it exists on a plane right below the physical, or hot and cold. You can't point to hot and cold because hot and cold exists on the etheric plane. And so these are the entities that are said to exist that help with the growing of nature, right? These are the lowest realm. But when we speak of the gods of the higher realms, these beings don't have a sense of individuality like human beings do. And so the gods were understood to be cosmic laws that are actually living intelligences. And we interact with these beings constantly, whether we know them or not. And again, within these beings, there are lesser beings that act sort of in the same way. For instance, the principle of fire, right? You'll have the god of fire in mythology, but then you have certain things in life that act that way as well. See, it's not just a physical thing. When you have someone who is hot-tempered, we have these kind of people in our existence that are fiery. Their personality is fiery. These are children of that God, that principle. That's their dominant characteristic. That's their intelligence that drives this being, right? And it's the same with anything. The warrior, you have warriors, and not only humans, plant life, animal life, they all exhibit certain characteristics that align with these principles. Just like the birds and the bees, they are beings within their own selves, but they enact certain laws. Bees pollinate other flowers season by season. This is a law. Birds pick seed and spread them where other seeds grow. By law, birds follow certain laws, bees follow certain laws, yet they are beings that enact these certain laws. So the gods, known in ancient times, were considered entities, beings, sort of like archetypes, which other organisms live within. And these entities or beings were not mechanical as we understand them to be. They were actually living intelligences. And when you embody an intelligence, they are called beings. Like you are an intelligence manifesting in a greater intelligence, and so we call you a being or an entity. And it's the same with these cosmic principles. That the ancients understood nothing in life is dead or non-intelligent. The table has intelligence. Although it's so much in a seed form, it's barely noticeable. Concrete has an intelligence. Rocks, minerals, plants, air, stars, planets, everything is intelligence. And so the ancients understood the gods to be, as I said, archetypes that precipitate lesser and lesser beings within their own body, just as cells go by the laws of your own body, but they have a mind of their own. You would be a god to them. And so the archetypes of the principles, these cosmic principles of nature, are archetypes to the humans, to the animals, to the plants, and to even other astral beings that are on planes that cannot be seen with the physical senses. So this is just a short insight into what the ancients understood the gods to be. Peace.